So dear respected Thai, dear brothers and sisters, let us breathe gently as one community body and join our palms together to welcome our dear Sister Peace. Sister Peace is going to offer a Dharma talk on our last day of practice for our 4-day retreat for the OI community. So let us enjoy breathing together with Sister Peace.
Good morning, respected Thai, Shuko, Chan Kong, all the elders and ancestors that are with us at this very moment. I am so happy to be here with you. I am Sister Peace, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm living in the land of the Chickasaw and Quapaw, commonly known as Memphis, Tennessee. And look at all of these beautiful faces. I'm just going to scroll through what is now 7 pages. Oh my goodness. Just hello to everybody I see that I know and those I don't know. Oh, Ty was right. Remember when our dear teacher would say, it's beautiful from up here? Well, I can still say that virtually. How wonderful to see all of your faces. So beautiful. Wow, 7 pages. Terrific. I'm so grateful to see all of you here and to be here with you. By way of, I guess, catch up, I just want to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing lately, what I call the sort of compassionate action work, and I know that we're all doing it. And that certainly will be one of my calls of action to you today. What action can you take with deep compassion? I think the thing that's closest to my heart right now, I've had the astounding and unique opportunity to be able to work here with the children at the Juvenile Detention Center in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, this, of course, is a jail for children. Children 12 to 17. But I have to tell you, it was utterly life-changing. To be able to bring the Dharma as we know it in such a way that our children are able to get it, that they are able to do what's called slow walking in their 6x8 cell. They're able to sit on the edge of a cement slab with a piece of foam this thick, come back to their breath and breathe like a tree in a storm. And so many other things that I could share, but that perhaps may be another talk. Suffice to say, it was and still continues to be a beautiful collaboration between mindfulness and the arts, and using the arts and storytelling and other creative techniques to help these children get in touch with the circumstances of their lives, which were far beyond the reach of their control, circumstances that existed before they were even born. But they're beautiful children, and I call them my cheering, as my mother would call us, my cheering. And I also taught them hugging meditation. And every session started with the core team, and the kids would file in one by one and get their hugs. And at the end, get their hugs too. And each one hugged differently. And I'll never forget the youngest one of the class at that time. We nicknamed him Sleepy. He's 13 years old, and he was still trying to work out his medication. And it was his time, his turn to hug. Boy, he hugged me so strong and so hard, and then he just about pushed me away. And he said, I can't remember the last time I had a hug. Wow. When you experience the lives that these children have had to navigate in ways most of the people I'm looking at right now have not ever had to even consider. We talk about compassion in our hearts, and I can just say that the bottom of the well of my compassion just fell out. It's just how moved I was, and reminded them how that they were Zen masters, and they were Thai's continuation. Because after the hour or so, two maybe we spent with them, they would go back, the core group, and teach the other boys. They wanted to know, what'd you do today? What'd you do today? Can we come? Can we come? And this explained to me why, after only being with them for 3 months, maybe twice a week, a couple hours each time, the violence in the facility went down by 54%. Because we had a dream and we had the support we needed on both the sides of the court and the juvenile detention. And speaking of dreams, I have to tell you one more that I had as a result of, wow, the three pandemics that our country and the world, but specifically I'll address our country, have had to navigate. The first one, of course, was COVID and continues to be COVID and will be COVID for the next year or so. And all that presented, all the challenges that it presented us. And then the crisis of leadership. They certainly didn't help COVID and whatever stripe you happen to be politically, current leadership has been challenging, to say the least. And as a result of a tragic murder, a Black man saying, "I can't breathe," for the second, third, fifth, 15th time. The murder of George Floyd. And how, with the conditions that are existing right here today in our country, caused a very positive upheaval. And we took to the streets. All of us did. And what a good thing that was and continues to be. Some of what I want to share with you today has to do with what our country has been grappling with for several hundred years, and for what our sanghas have also been challenged with. And I want to talk a little bit about uncomfortable spaces. And the need for us to be open as a community, in the community, within the Sangha, of spaces where all of us can transform and heal. I just want to say that my dear father, he could not speak of his time in the war. My dad died 3 years ago, 2017, almost 93. He couldn't talk about that time in the war ever. And his experience there, I'm sure, compounded by racism. He dreamed of being a professional baseball player, but because of the color of his skin, he was not allowed. And I know that contributed to the anger in his life. And he didn't have the practice or even professional help to alleviate it. What he did have in the last part of his life, he had the compassionate antidote of gradual dementia, and old age, that blessed him with remembering the blessings of his life, the joys, and not the pain. And I know that as a collective, we can do better. And some of the parts of our history are not pretty at all. Someone texted me this morning and shared with me today would have been the 79th birthday of Emmett Till. The 79th birthday of Emmett Till. And our dear George Floyd will miss his 79th birthday too. So as a Sangha, what is it we can do that can help us to address these really uncomfortable spaces that we find ourselves in, regardless of our stripe? What's the call to action? Are we asking what we've been taught by our beloved teacher? Are we asking? Are we sure? Why is this happening? When there have been certain requests in the Sangha or certain things that we see as a result of things bubbling up, the systematic and institutional racism in our country bubbling up, are we triggered in some way? Why? Why do I feel this way? Why is this uncomfortable? What is it that I fear? What are the ancestors in me reaching across time and space, trying to tell me? How can I help heal their pain of yesterday and today? As I heal them, am I healing myself? This is our work individually, with affinity, and collectively. You know, the practice dictates that we take care of ourselves first. Otherwise, I don't know where we're going to take care of anyone else. And while others can assist us in the healing, it is us who must do the work, who must take the first steps and not depend on others to teach us right now, perhaps other than ourselves. This way, many of us, especially those of us in BIPOC spaces, have a chance to heal ourselves first. And those who are non-BIPOC also have a chance to heal. And what's being requested is not with an intent of separation, because we all live and work and move and have our being within the beautiful arms of the Sangha. When there's this request, there's, again, well, why am I a little bit uncomfortable? What's being triggered? Who's being triggered in me? Now we need to do the work so that we can individually and collectively heal. But now is a time, most specifically, that asks us to heal with those that speak our language. I want to just read a quote from Claudia Rankin. She was on Krista Tippett's On Being. She had something very interesting to say about uncomfortable spaces. She says her real ambition is how to have a conversation so that the space can hold discomfort. So that the thing isn't a thing that you have to put over there. So that we can get over ourselves, in a sense. All of us, people of color, white people, yellow people, all kinds of people. Whatever stripe on the rainbow we identify with. Because it offers us a moment when we can invest in the kind of possibility that is beyond our negotiation of each other. But Krista Tippett says, yes, but I think people probably feel it's dangerous. And she says, it's only dangerous because we don't do it. Things can get ordinary rather fast. I think that we meet this fear and this discomfort with our practice. I know for me, when I was ordained as a novice and received my Dharma name, which is in Vietnamese, An Yim, and An means peace. And I stood there on my knees and I gave my name and I went, what? Peace? Okay. Because, I wanted something that meant fearlessness. But of course, after a certain period of practice, I realized that if there wasn't peace in me, I could not be fearless. I couldn't even meet fear without that stillness, without touching that center. And I think we all know what that is and all have a practice for that. And so we talk about languages, and thanks to institutionalized systemic racism in our country and the world, we speak different languages because we've had different experiences. So on language. So I've lived in the Vietnamese community since 2005, when I first joined Deer Park as a layperson. And, even after all these years, I still can't speak Vietnamese enough to sit in a Dharma sharing group. Not unless, of course, I have a translator. Now, with a translator, of course, I can understand what's being done. But there are times when, the translator needs to really concentrate on the talk for the benefit of themselves. It's not the time to lean on them to say, what does that mean? Can you explain that to me? And I understood that. I may have been a little sad that I couldn't, be in, but I didn't take it personally because I knew what they were talking about. I knew what it was like to be in spaces and to have to translate, which is a difficult thing to do when you're also trying to share deeply and share your suffering. And when we're in spaces with folks who understand that suffering without explanation, it makes it a lot more comfortable for us. Now I know that when I couldn't join that Dharma sharing group, there might have been another one, or I would look at a video or have, they're just find another Dharma door. And it's similarly in terms of language for us in BIPOC spaces. There can often be, because of our history of everyday, daily aggressions or infractions against us, whether they are conscious or not, they add up. They have a traumatic effect. And when there's the request for BIPOC spaces, it's so that these traumas that are ancient, really, have a chance to settle down. Because sometimes the people sitting in front of us remind us of individuals who have perpetrated aggressions against us. And after time, after time, after time, after time, this is not healthy. And so again, the need for space to be together. And not only in Dharma sharing, but also through retreats. I miss the days when we used to have a BIPOC retreat every year, one monastery or another. And of course, it was beloved Thai who supported the first two, 2004, 2005. He knew that creating the safer spaces were good for the collective, for healing and transformation. Thai even said that those who have created injustice, who might even be the source of our suffering and has tried to kill us, it's important for us to have spaces to deal with these traumas. And Thai started Plum Village as a result of the trauma of war. That's really one of the major conditions that we're all sitting here able to share today, this many years later. So we have to be really aware and compassionate to know that when some of us are in certain spaces, it actually triggers trauma. Just like the soldiers who come home from war, just like my dad who couldn't talk about it. Certain things, certain sounds, or certain situations take them right back to that place of trauma. And so they seek professional help and they sit with groups of others who have suffered the same, right? Other soldiers who lived through PTSD. And in our own Sangha, we also have other affinity groups. We have healthcare workers, we have educators, we too have veterans. We have teen camp. We have Vietnamese groups, French groups. It's because we speak languages and we share experiences that don't require explanation, but simply a nod of the head. But for some reason, for some, not all, there's a request for BIPOC space, when you bring in again the issue of race, it's a very sensitive subject. And so we have to return to the questions of why. Are we sure? What's being triggered? Why am I feeling the way I am? How can I look deeply at this? Are there others who are experiencing the same thing that I am? And that is an opportunity for our non-BIPOC friends to get together and to share and to look deeply, to lean into the discomfort, because that is the vein of gold. That is where we learn. That is where the insight lies. That's where the healing comes for our ancestors. May not have been us who perpetrated certain things, but we certainly have benefited from it. And what can we do to alleviate the voices in us? This is across the board. There's no space where that does not reside. And yes, it may be that we didn't perpetuate anything. We're out there actively doing things. But at the same time, there are deep systemic beliefs where we are maybe even not conscious of. I want to share something with you. I belong to an artist collective, and I was invited to be a part of it so that I could share mindfulness. And one of the artists there, she had life-challenging experience of leukemia as a young woman. She worked through it. And one of the things she did was invite her family to have a 100-day project to create something every day. So she used this and she created something called the isolation journals. So during COVID, she recreated it, a 100-day project, and immediately 30,000 people, first day. So this was a project for journalists. So she invited me to share on day 85. And I'd like to read to you what I wrote for the journal. At the end of each journal is a prompt, a challenge. At the time I was in New Mexico. As I sit here in Santa Fe, New Mexico this morning, I think of an experience I had recently. Just a few days ago, I went to the city's historic plaza where protesters were celebrating the mayor's order to remove an obelisk erected in 1868, engraved with the words, "To the heroes who have fallen in the various battles with the blank Indians in the territory of New Mexico." One Native American woman got up and told the story of how, for over a century, the blank was engraved with the word savage. So it read, "To the heroes who have fallen in the various battles with the savage Indians in the territory of New Mexico." Then, in 1974, her grandfather dressed up in a blonde wig and a pair of overalls so that he'd look more official. He went up to the monument and chiseled out that word, savage. To me, it's a powerful metaphor. It speaks not only to these external monuments, but also to what is engraved inside of us. It brought me back to the first time I went to Africa to visit one of our Buddhist communities in Botswana. Have many indelible memories from that trip, including the experience of being surrounded by mostly Black folk. An amazing thing, something I had never experienced before living in America. And seeing them all in positions of power. I also see the moment when I was dining with a gorgeous African human rights activist and attorney. She was a total dynamo, but I still had a moment of doubt. Could she really be all that? I knew immediately where it came from. I was arcing back in history, in ancestral time, back to when I was growing up, when there was the question, even among Black people, whether we should hire a Black attorney or go to a Black doctor, or should you get a white one? I was surprised to learn that I'd retained that doubt. That small sense that we were a little bit less than, surrounded by all these beautiful Africans, and that worm came up. One of the lasting legacies of both colonization and racial oppression is how they truly made the colonized and the oppressed believe they were inferior. We all have some ideas that are engraved in us, inherited. These judgments and falsehood hold us all back. So as we're recognizing the damage done by these false heroes, may we think of this beautiful Native American man who put his life on the line to carve out what was engraved. May we also identify the damaging monuments we carry within us and begin dismantling those too. So the writing prompt for that day was, and a challenge for us to consider, what monuments do you carry inside of you that are engraved with harmful beliefs or represent damaging legacies? What would it take to dismantle them? What could you put in their place that is loving, kind, joyful, and true? We must do this. We must bring down the monuments within to protect us and our future so that these monuments can never be raised again. And I think that when we talk about uncomfortable spaces, there's another space that's a bit uncomfortable. And that's sometimes, for some people, there's a discomfort when we talk about Black Lives Matter. How many of us remember those signs back in the civil rights days? And our beloved king came right here to Memphis that I'm sitting in to help the men in the sanitation strike. And at the Claiborne Temple, not far from here, printed out signs that said, I am a man. These dignified men with these dignified signs that said, I am a man. Back then, Dr. King and the movement knew that these things had to be articulated, had to speak to the value of humanity, because our humanity has been under assault and attack for 400 years. And now we have an opportunity to embrace it. The entire world has, all of us, I'm sure many of you, if you were unable to protest physically in the street, I'm sure you protested in your heart with other things you could have done virtually or in a small bubble of which we all live in this thing called COVID. So when we hear Black Lives Matter, it's yesterday's I am a man. And what is it that we hear? What is it we're really hearing? Is it mere recognition, or is something else coming into play? Are we hearing only Black Lives Matter? Or do we hear Black Lives Matter more than my life? Or do we hear what is being said, what so many of us have protested to support and understand to be true, which is simply Black Lives Matter too? It must be proclaimed, because I am not fully free, and my life holds the same value as others. It has to be said, it has to be shouted, because of the 400 years of our country's original sin, that thing called slavery, colonization, supremacy. Dr. King understood this, and he understood that, creating the beloved community could not mean ignoring race, racial conditioning, or refusing to create safer spaces, because that's what's requested and that's what's required. Again, no intention to leave Sangha, but that the loving arms of the Sangha can hold it all. And while BIPOC are having our spaces and sharing our pain, non-BIPOC can do the same. And perhaps feel more comfortable saying things in that affinity group than in a mixed group. And there are times when the groups will be mixed. And right now, whereas all the other affinity groups have been enjoying these Dharma sharing spaces at retreats, BIPOC hasn't had one for many years at our monasteries. And it's time for that to change. It's time for that to shift. Thai was the first, 2004 and 5, to embrace it. It was the largest gathering of 400 people, people of color, people of bi race, LGBTQ+. Once a year, it was happening. And when we would have the chance to come to other retreats, there would be spaces there too. I personally have had to fight for them. Oh, well, this it's not enough, which we would say for any affinity group. But I knew that it was important. And I said, give them to me. And I started to mix not only BIPOC, LGBTQ, and that was enough. So we have to see how value is important and space is important. And it doesn't mean we're being excluded or less than. It just means we're included elsewhere for the moment. And I know that a lot of us are not used to being excluded. But if that's the way we choose to look at it, I would challenge you and say, are you sure? And whatever the answer is, so be it. It's the way it is today. So again, what's our call to action? Asking, are we sure? Why is this happening? Why am I triggered? Why am I feeling this way? Why is this uncomfortable? What is it that I fear? What are the ancestors in me reaching across time and space trying to tell me? How can I help heal their pain of yesterday today? And as I heal them, am I healing myself? This is our work, individually, in affinity, and collectively. I just want to touch on one more thing before I close. That's on harmony. And I specifically want to refer to glacial harmony, is what I call it. Isn't it a beautiful picture when we visualize the Sangha going as a river, flowing, moving dynamically, going against the bank and going over rocks and becoming gorgeous waterfalls, flowing, moving dynamically together, navigating all the obstacles that are in the river's flow. But when we ask some of us to be denied our full expression because it makes others uncomfortable, we're no longer a dynamic river. We become something more akin to a glacier. We're frozen. Nobody wants to move or say anything for fear of reprisal or hurting feelings. But the work that we do dictates just that. There's going to be discomfort. So do we want to be a glacier with inches along at 1-2 inches a year if we're fast, with some slipping and sliding on the top and some frozen within the river because it's too uncomfortable for them to fully express themselves? Dr. King said, justice delayed is justice denied. Waiting for others to feel comfortable with change is delay. And allowing that discomfort to dictate when justice, freedom, and equality arise is denied. Glacier, river. What quality of harmony do we want for our Sangha? And I want to close with a beautiful paragraph from the Who We Are statement by the Lotus Sangha, Sanghas of Asian and Pacific Islander OI members. who practice together. And they say, and I think this is our ultimate dimension. We co-create a healing space that cultivates joy and takes care of suffering. We seek to build and support spiritual community that can be a true refuge, inclusive, welcoming, and healing for all people, including people of color and other underrepresented and marginalized communities. We strengthen our capacity to empathize with difference. We recognize that discomfort often leads to real growth. And we practice to suspend judgment. Dear friends, thank you for allowing me to share today. And I want to allow some time for Q&A. Before that, I'm sure my beloved and Hung would like to invite the bell. I think Mitchell is going to explain to us how to do the hand raising for the Q&A.
Dear Sister Peace, dear Ty, thank you very much, Sister. We have an opportunity for questions and answers. We're now at 166 people. It's very hard to see who's raising hands on a screen, so we're going to use the Zoom feature of raise hands. Let me put on a screen share here. So if you go to your participant list and click on that, you'll see a blue hand that says raise hands. And so if you have a question, click on that. It'll show up on my screen, and then I can call on people one at a time to ask their questions. Ty often mentions the best questions are questions from our heart, and short questions are very good. Mitchell bowing out. Stop the screen share, and Annie Mahan got her hand in first. Annie, it's your turn.
Dear Ty, dear Sangha, dear sister, I mostly wanted to just offer my gratitude for your beautiful talk and the gentle courage, which I just see in you always. It's so beautiful. And just acknowledge there's something that was sad in me that this talk had to happen, or that this is what you talked about, that I'm sad that this requires this in this moment, and appreciating it also at the same time, and wanting to just, say that I wish it weren't so difficult in this moment to, that we didn't have to go back to the I am a man, that this is still happening, and the idea that really going into ourselves and healing what that is in us is so important for me. And this The work has to go until I take my last breath, as one of my teachers says, and appreciating your reminder that Ty was the one who started the BIPOC spaces, and how important it is in our tradition that we continue that practice. And so I just want to share my support and love for you and gratitude for this beautiful talk. So much love. Annie bowing out.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate your sentiment, and I say to that, mere recognition. It's what it is. It's where we are. This is where we start. This is where we start. And so let's get on with it.
Mum, you're next. Please unmute and share your question.
Dear sister, thank you for talking about the affinity group. My question is, I'm in the diversity committee in my therapist community, and for the first time, they want to have the round table about anti-racism. When I am in a meeting, I'm not really talk much, but when I do, I assert myself. So I suggest affinity groups, because talking about, just like you say, very sensitive subject with all the mixed race in Los Angeles here. So I'm the only Asian in the committee. And when I suggest the affinity group, one person just disagree. And then I try to explain more. And another people of color, these two is people of color, also say this is not appropriate at this time. So my brain got hijacked, and I did not say anything afterward. And that night I could not sleep, so I resigned from being in the committee. And then quite a few friends reached out to me and said, no, we cannot let you go, because you have really good idea. We need you here. And actually they are white folks. So I'm torn, because I want to serve, and I know that is important, and I want to advocate. That's why I want to advocate for people like me, the quiet people that want to have voice too. So I'm torn. So how can I serve without being hurt? I'm bowing out.
Thank you, Mom. You actually reminded me that I will compile a list of resources and give it to Mitchell, and he will send it to you. And I'm really happy that among us, we actually have some very practiced people regarding your question. So I'm going to call upon one, and I hope she doesn't mind. Mitchell, I'm hoping maybe you can help bring up Dr. Rhonda Williams. She is a historian in American and African American history, and I think that she can help to answer your question, because this is what she's out there doing. Rhonda, would you mind?
Rhonda, you just need to unmute and
Okay.
start talking, and
All
the
right.
screen will be yours.
I can figure that out. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Sister Peace, thank you so much for your Dharma talk, deep and profound. And Mom, thank you for your beautiful question, and good to see you again after so long. We can't avoid being hurt. And so the question is, how are we protecting ourselves? What kind of groups are we finding access to solace in the ability to find both solitude and stability in, to actually help to support us as we go and do the work? So I'm a professor. I work in the academy. And most of the spaces I'm in, they're majority white spaces. And I teach African American history. Most of my classes are majority white classes. And so what I've had to do is to find spaces of support. Sometimes those spaces of support are BIPOC spaces that help ground me, allow me to rejuvenate and resuscitate and to release and to let go and to laugh and to, that's the other thing, find joy. So that we can build a bubble, a shield of resistance and resilience around us. In fact, I'm thinking of I'm not sure how many people watch, the Netflix series on the Buddha. I mean, we that's a whole nother question about what we believe about it or whatever. But the Buddha is sitting under the tree, the Bodhi tree, and he's going through the process of approaching enlightenment. And his various cells in the world, the kleshas are coming at him, and he's sitting there and he is concentrating. He's developing solidity and stability. He's grounding himself in the earth, and then this shield comes around him, and the arrows just bounce off. They bounce off. This is the image, right? And so finding those spaces in Sangha, BIPOC spaces, BIPOC retreats, spaces with white allies who are willing to do the work, to find those spaces where we can rejuvenate ourselves, know that suffering is our first noble truth, and figure out ways that we can protect ourselves, not in a mundane way, but in a way that allows us to experience the hurt, figure out what our antidote is to that, to see it as a ground of practice, and then to walk back into those spaces feeling solid and grounded and ready to do the work. And to understand that speaking truth is not divisive, but it takes fierce courage. It takes fearlessness in the face of fear. That's what fearlessness is. That is actually acting in the face of fear, not getting rid of fear. So those emotions are going to be there. And sometimes there are other support groups on campus or in your job network or the Sangha that you could turn to kind of really help bolster you. And then, just tell people, are we willing to have the honest conversations? And we have to not only develop the resilience and the joy, but bring the kind of energy that we hope will bring people along with us, just because we are gonna stay on top of it. There's resolve and commitment and openness, and then you let it go. I read something and just heard something by and about Lama Rod Owens, who says, I can go into the room, I can say what I need to say. If it's a majority non-BIPOC space, I can be honest, I can pour my heart open, I can give suggestions, and then everyone there has to do the work. I can't do everybody's work, but I'm going to continue to go into those spaces. So those of us who are ready for that, we should do that. Those of us who are not ready for that, and we need to do more of our own work, that's cool too. And sometimes we move back and forth. Sometimes I'm exhausted after I'm in a majority non-BIPOC space, and I just have to I have to call up some folks, or I have to actually dance, y'all, I dance. So, whatever it is that rejuvenates you, right? And I can share more, because I don't know why Sister Peace put me on the screen. She knows I can talk, I chitter chatter. But I hope some of the things that I've said have been helpful. I hope some of the energy that I've brought, but hurt's not going to go away. It's actually working through that hurt and that discomfort that too is going to bring us a greater sense of freedom and a greater sense of resolve. Rhonda bowing out.
Thank you, Rhonda. I don't think I need to add to that.
This is Mitchell bowing in. First, to add to what Sister Peace said, we will be sending her links and resources to everyone who registered. So everyone will get them, including Mom. And the next question is from our sister Luan.
This is Loan bowing in. Dear Thay, dear Sangha friends, and dear Sister Peace. It is so much joy to see you and to hear you today. I cannot wait to be in touch with you again, my dear sister. And thank you for the amazing words and the teaching that you have shared with us today. My question has to do with how do I go about, and I think Rhonda have answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I think Mom had also brought it up, and I'm going to look forward to receiving the links. But, you know, I come from a very staunch Christian Catholic family. And in this Black Lives Movement, I have been blessed to live in New York City and be a part of a very progressive activist group. And so I wanted to share with my siblings who are in our 50s and 60s and really, you know, bring them along with the understanding. So I sent my family a link called How to Talk to Your Asian Family About Anti-Black Racism. It's a webinar offered by some really special Viet folks. And I really want to be in touch with our API group too, by the way. And the response that I get from my sibling was quite difficult for me to process. One sister said, "Why do you think our family need this? We are Catholics and Christians and we treat people with respect and dignity until they misbehave." And I just am sitting with this pain of not being able to accept the superiority complex. And I know from what Rhonda said is to find my own tribes and to renew and to shed tears. And that's what I need to do because I'm stuck here at this point. And I just don't know how to come back and state my intention and ask for dialogues. Out of 7 siblings, it's all 7 no's. No, we're not interested. And just that's where I am. I'm stuck in a position, in the place of not knowing what to do, even though I know I need to go back, breathe, find my stability, to go back out again. And I have this absolute belief that you said earlier about who am I, the youngest one in the family, to go and talk to my elder siblings. It's that belief that I'm not worthy to have this conversation. So that's where I am, and I'm going to stop. To say thank you for being here with all of us. I'm bowing out.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you too. It's been a long time. Yes, we do bump up into that, don't we? We're ready to get on the horse and charge, but where's everybody else? I think that just keep coming back to mere recognition and understanding where we are and where other people are. I've had a number of experiences in my life. The most indelible one was a few years ago. And I had to face a challenge of what people thought of me. And I have to tell you something quite interesting. One of the best lessons I ever had Because there were people like your family who I thought I could depend on and were sort of ready, ready to make some change. But I found out they weren't ready. And they let me know it. And then there were people whom I thought for sure would not support. And guess what? They did. I went, without judgment, without discrimination, without taking it personally. I said, well, now, out of 360 doors, one was closed. The other 359 open. We have to accept where people are and not push when they're not ready, because it brings up all sorts of things. The work that perhaps they haven't done, or at least that we perceive they haven't done, and we could be wrong. So continue to do your work, to do your practice, embody your practice, and find other family members who will join with you in that. Your family will notice. Maybe they'll offer and maybe not. But let's not spend the energy wishful thinking. Let's spend the energy embodying and doing.
Sister Florentina, please ask your question.
Thank you. Sister Peace, thank you so much for being here and giving this talk. I have so much gratitude for all that you shared and just your practice and your advocacy in a way on behalf of those of us who really cherished those BIPOC retreats and found them very healing. And I think the first time I attended one, I just said, oh, I don't have to be like this. I'd been a bit like a glacier in the practice. And then when I saw the Dharma embodied in BIPOC people in our tradition, it freed me, and it freed me in a way that I felt I could serve the Sangha much better. So just thank you for that. My question is, I've taken the 14 mindfulness trainings and often have to rely on the training of staying in the Sangha, just this intention to stay and to come back to a predominantly white space that doesn't always feel safe, and it can feel triggering. And so it doesn't always feel like my place of refuge. It feels like a place of a different kind of practice, a practice of work, a practice of forgiveness, a practice of, as you're saying, meeting people where they are. And then, Sister Rhonda's encouragement to find spaces that are the refuge, I think, is the other piece of that. But I'm just wondering, how is it, and I think of beginning anew, how is it that where I find like constantly sort of feel hurt maybe by the silence of predominantly white Sangha in terms of racial justice, how do I keep coming back? And is the beginning anew, do I just need to do that in myself? Or is there a conversation that needs to be had in our local Sanghas, whether it be through beginning anew or through a larger beginning new, the Maha Sangha, of how race and racism is impacting us within our Sanghas and what we're experiencing within those Sanghas? Florentina bowing out.
Thank you, Florentina. Yes, beginning anew is certainly, it's a very deep practice, right? And it's a practice that we can do whether we sit down with the flowers and in a circle and water the flowers in each other and share our regrets, et cetera, et cetera. And silencing, with the dispassionate act of silencing or asking someone to not share or to dismiss what they have to say because it makes us feel uncomfortable. Not the practice. Right? It's just not the practice. I think we can make an attempt at beginning anew. I think that we can also write letters. Sometimes letters have a riveting effect. Sometimes letters can move mountains. Because I know that the discomfort is such that, speaking of mountains, just to use a metaphor, what we're challenged to work through can only be worked through. We have to, bore that hole through that mountain. We can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. The work is to move through it. And it is an act of bypass if we think that we can hold ourselves above it all and say, well, I'm doing my practice and I'll just wait for everybody else to catch on. This is a collective effort. And everyone contributes something in their own way. But we must do the work. Can't levitate our way through it. I know sometimes there's it's the ultimate dimension and the historical dimension. And yes, the ultimate dimension is something we can strive to manifest here. But I recall our teacher saying, the ultimate dimension is found right here in the historic dimension. And I believe that expressing ourselves is a must. It's uncomfortable. Often it can be triggering and traumatizing. And we can reach out for help to do that. That is where the Sangha is. I've written a few letters in my life. And there are people whose faces I see right here now who've helped me with those letters. I just put everything down. Someone can come along and make it more skillful. And I've had the chance to do that for other people. And to extend the invitation to share. And to share what it's like, what it feels like to be silenced, to be encased in a glacier because someone's feelings are as fragile as ice. To share it as skillfully as we can, but to share it nonetheless. Thank you. The bell from Sister Anho.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, we're getting close to the end of our session. Eleanor, please ask your question. Eleanor Miller.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, thank you. I really did not have a question. I just guess I pushed the wrong button, but thank you so much, Sister Peace, and all the other people who participated. Just as a comment, being a part of this white majority, I have been complacent, and I appreciate the sharing, so I am not so complacent anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Hamp will give you the last question, and I think we have to end.
Dear Sangha, dear Thai, thank you very much for the talk. Reverend Theodore Angel Williams had suggested once that there's a difference between being welcoming on paper and having a deep cellular welcoming to all people, especially people of color. So do you have a view on, excuse me, I'm quite nervous. Does that sound like something that would benefit when we have the awareness that we're not being welcoming, we can feel it in our body? Does that seem like a good condition to apply insight and deep looking for? And do you have recommendations for encouraging warmth and welcoming on a cellular level? Thank you, dear Sangha. Jenny, bowing out.
I understand that sense of not feeling welcome. I think everybody has had that experience one way or another, but marginalized folks probably experience that much more frequently, if not every day. And those things certainly do add up for trauma. I think the challenge is to take care of ourselves first, of course. And when we are ready, to challenge those who believe they're being welcoming, but are not being really welcoming, in fact, are being unwelcoming. To look deeply into that, because that bespeaks to me of fear. There's a certain power structure. When folks are in power, don't want to give it up so easily. They don't necessarily think of it that way, and perhaps offer some bits of change, maybe inclusion, but ultimately things are still centric around the majority of people. And that's not shifting the paradigm. The paradigm shift that's needed is to have co-sharing, co-creation, which means no one person or group has the power to shape the entity more than anyone else. It's done together. And again, what's being triggered? What's the fear? What's the anger? What's the loss? Those three are always united. What's the assurance that we can get from our practice that will help us to more than believe, help us to more than embrace, but help us to embody the truth of the equality, the big E equality of all lives, of all opinions, of all practices, of all people. And that's a tall order. But with skill, with heart, just like those boys changed the shape of my heart in prison. This is the job for us, to be open. Crank open the door to that heart. I used to have a vision that the door of my heart was heavy and rusted, falling off the hinge and barnacles all over it. That's how I started in this practice. But bit by bit, take a little something and help clean it up. Release what we don't need, what's heavy. But release can only happen when we've done the work to recognize what's the fear and to recognize what's the loss. And when we really truly come to knowing what is it that we think we're going to lose, come to terms with it and realize, well, maybe it's time to let it go. It's a job of radical listening, real radical listening, taking that radical action that can help heal us so that we can be available in light to help heal those around us, concentrically, our loved ones, our community, our city, our country, our world, our cosmos, our galaxy, because it's all interrelated and it all is. And when we have a glimpse, hopefully, of the magnitude of who we are and where we all come from, the rest of it really will fall away. But the work comes first.
So, dear brothers and sisters, if you've been sitting cross-legged, please unfold your legs and massage your feet well. At the next sound of the bell, we all will stand up and will stand inside the big meditation hall in Blue Cliff. Let's join our palms and bow to all of our siblings, to Sister Peace. Let's turn towards the altar. Dear brothers and sisters, we will have time for personal outdoor walking while holding the awareness that we are still walking together hand in hand in the Sangha body. And then we will come back and have lunch at 12 noon. So we might want to be back a few minutes before that and get ready. Enjoy.